I'm Mark Stoll from the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Faculty Development. Today we're going to look at some tips and tricks for the first week of class, first day of class, earlier part of the semester. Let's get started. Before we dive in, 3 quick promises for the next few minutes. First, you'll understand the science behind the first week, why the first week matters, not gut instinct, actual research. Second, you'll leave with evidence-based strategies for building belonging and curiosity from day one. And third, you'll walk away with a real toolkit, activities you can use this semester, not just good intentions that quietly die by week 3. Here's the agenda. We'll cover the science of first impressions, the research on belonging, a practical playbook of what to do and what to stop doing, a quick word on staying inclusive, and some icebreakers. Please note that these slides and additional information are available on our CAT Wiki. Let's start with some genuinely humbling research. Ambody and Rosenthal, that's their real names, showed people 2 seconds of a silent video of a teacher. 2 seconds. No sound, no syllabus, no 47 slide deck of course policies. And from that alone, viewers could predict with real statistical accuracy how the teacher would be evaluated at the end of the semester. Somewhere out there, a whole semester of your hard work, your office hours, your feedback, your late night grading, all that time spent on this course is competing with about 2 seconds of you walking into a room? Crazy. Here's why. Students aren't doing careful, deliberate analysis. They're running on what some call System 1. Fast, intuitive, gut-level processing. It's the same system that decides a hot stove is bad news. And it's just as quick to decide whether you seem kind or whether you might cry if the projector doesn't turn on. And it's stable, but it's bias-prone. There's a halo effect and a stubborn tendency for one bad moment to outweigh 10 good ones. More recent work backs this up. Also, a 2024 study comparing 30-second clips to 10-minute ones found that longer viewing lets people refine the details, but the overall verdict barely moves. First impressions aren't just fast, they're kind of sticky. This might be scary if you're past the first day of class, but you can make a big difference. The strongest signal you send is nonverbal warmth. Smiling, eye contact, occasionally moving around the room instead of hiding behind the podium like it's a witness stand. That's a channel every one of us controls, no matter what we teach or how we personally feel about the first week of the new semester. Belonging isn't a vague, feel-good idea. It's measurable, and it's one of those strongest predictors we have of whether a student finishes their degree. Start with the scale of evidence. Walton and colleagues ran a randomized control trial with almost 27,000 students across 22 institutions. A single 30-minute intervention before students even arrived on campus, just normalizing that homesickness and awkwardness are temporary and nearly universal. This meaningfully improved persistence, especially for students navigating college for the first time in their families. Separately, a synthesis of 118 academic studies found that community, not GPA, not financial aid, is a primary predictor of whether a student completes college. 2 completely different research methods, 1 massive experiment, and 1 sweeping review, landing on the same conclusion. Here's the catch, and it's part of what I actually want you to remember, that belonging message only works if your classroom delivers on it. You can tell a student you belong here all you want, but if the classroom doesn't back that up with real peer support and genuinely inclusive instruction, it's an empty promise. A beautifully worded one, but empty. Every single classroom interaction either builds belonging or erodes it. There's no neutral option, which is either the most inspiring or the most scary sentence of this whole presentation, depending on the day you're having. A quick human note before we get into tactics. Many of your students, especially your new students, and especially those carrying more than their share, bring real anxiety into week one. Homesickness, social awkwardness, sensory overload from suddenly sharing a room with a lot of strangers, and, the weird stuff that goes on in a classroom with the projector and everything else. None of that means something is wrong with them. It means they're human and they're mid-transition. You don't need a counseling degree to help here. You need predictable structure, a little flexibility, and willingness to learn a student's name correctly, which costs you nothing and buys you an enormous amount of goodwill. Now for the first part, where I gently insult a very common teaching practice. And if this is you, I promise you it's not personal, because it was also for me for a long time. How you open day one sends a message before you say a word. A syllabus, read start to finish, signals one thing: administration matters most. A real question, a provocative scenario from your course, signals something very different. Your thinking matters most. Same 50 minutes or so, completely different message. Two concrete ways to make that shift. Cornell's Center for Teaching Innovation says start with real content or a provocative question and save the syllabus for the last 10 minutes when the room's energy is naturally lower anyway and students are mentally packing up, regardless of what you're saying. There's also recent advice that takes it further. Move the basic policies to a self-graded quiz on Brightspace entirely, so nobody has to sit through a live reading of the late work policy. Then you can spend your actual face time on rapport and community instead. One practice that I've done for a couple of years is to have a sort of escape room. This is how I do it. I separate the students into groups. I then give them strips of paper that either come from the syllabus or don't come from the syllabus. And I ask them to take the sentences that are in the syllabus, which are coded with a letter, and reject all the others. Then they go on to the next group and the next group and the next group. And I actually have a small plastic box with a lock on it that you can use letters for and not numbers for the lock. That way it's easier for me. I'm dyslexic. So anyway, the key word was salty. So they have to find the correct phrases, and when they do, they will add up to the word salty. Of course, it doesn't come in that order. So then they have to look for and figure out what that word on the lock would be. And after doing that, they can open the lock and they win the prize, which is, for me, my students love when I give them quiz grade points. So I give them extra points on a quiz. They don't want to feel like they're doing it for nothing. So the bottom line is stop opening with one document that tells the students, correctly or not, that rules matter more than they do. You can be just as thorough about your policies. You just don't need to prove it in the first 50 minutes of the classes. If you want one simple framework to hang all of this on, James Lang's 4 C's is hard to beat, and it fits on an index card, which is more than I can say than for most pedagogical frameworks. Curiosity. Open with a real question, not a checklist. We did this in my Ideal Society class this semester by asking students to tell us a few things about themselves. Their major, where they're from, what they did this summer, what they enjoyed, and then ask one question about the course. It was interesting because most of the questions that were asked by the students were about the professors, because this is a class where 3 of us teach a class at the same time. And so they asked us why this class, how it started. One student asked us what books we read lately, which I thought was great. This really creates community. Humanize yourself, humanize them, and have them talking to your peers before you get started. Just ask them to introduce themselves to their next door neighbor as we get that projector going, which always takes longer than it should, they get to know each other, and then the initial questions are building in curiosity and community. They learn a lot about us. We learn a lot about them. So learning starts, get students doing real cognitive work on day one. Even before they're ready, they may not have a clue what to ask, but give them a chance, and if they can't come up with anything, put them in groups of 3 and ask them to work together. That way, they know you're serious about content, but you're also serious about getting to know them. Then you can give them whatever kind of expectations you want during the semester. And because you didn't start with it, students pay closer attention to what you do, and they notice what's going on and the content and the style in which you deliver it. That teaches them more and helps them more to understand what the course is about and what the class will be about. The University of Iowa's Center for Teaching put together 7 very practical ideas, and my honest advice is don't try all 7 or you'll burn out by Wednesday. Curate the room. Start with music, seating, energy. I rarely do that because, as you noticed at the first of the video, I'm really old and my music is probably not something they're excited about. Next is something that I've already spoken about, is a quick write, pair, share. Well, you'll ask them a question, have them write it down, and then group up in groups of 2 or 3, however you want to, and share what they've written. And then they can share with you. Dive straight into content instead of circling it. That was easy in our Ideal Society class because we just said, come up with an idea of what you think an ideal society would look like. You can also co-create community guidelines together. I wouldn't suggest doing this on the first day. I would say once you get to know each other, that might be a better time to do that. And also follow up with a short Brightspace welcome video. Remember, these 7 ideas are not a mandate, it's a menu. Take a few of those. What award-winning professors do. This next one comes from direct interviews with instructors, their peers, and students recognized as genuinely outstanding. 4 themes came up again and again. Communicate expectations clearly so students know exactly what the course asks of them. No guessing games. Learn about your students, their backgrounds, their preparedness, what they actually hope to get out of the course. Introduce yourself for real. Show accessibility and share what you're genuinely passionate about teaching. And establish a collaborative, trusting tone, protecting student vulnerability from the very first minute. Notice how closely these echo Lang's 4 C's from a couple of slides ago. I'm not being redundant. There's a little difference here. Different researchers, different methodology, a similar conclusion. That convergence is worth pointing out to a skeptical colleague. This isn't one person's pet theory. It's what keeps showing up whenever anyone actually studies great teaching. One line from that research is worth reading exactly as written. Dismissing the class immediately after reading the syllabus signals that student interaction doesn't matter. Sit on that one for a second. I know I had to. Next, watch your inconsistent language. Researchers observed 23 STEM classes and found something humbling. Instructors from every teaching style, content heavy, logistics heavy, all of them unintentionally sent exclusionary signals, not through their content, through the offhand asides around it. Small things like, don't be the student who skips office hours sounds like a joke, but it lands as a threat. Office hours are for every one of you. I mean that. In my courses, I actually offer them 40 points on a quiz for every time they show up to my office. We sit down and we get to know each other well. This is great because I get to know them, and it's also great because I get to write a lot of recommendations for students because I really get to know them. Also, there's a lot of negativity that you don't mean to, like if you're not a math person, this class is going to be rough. That's really bad. That would scare me. Whatever your starting point, there's a path through this course, and I'm there to help you, and we have the resources to do so. That is an encouraging way to tell them this might be a tough course. And I always ask them to email me in a certain way. I put that on the syllabus. I do that, and then I explain to them how that's related to our mission of creating leaders. Leaders don't send out short emails that say, hey, I'm going to miss class today. So I think that demonstrates to them that I'm not doing this punitively. I'm doing this to train them to be better leaders and stronger students. The content doesn't change in any of these. The signal completely does. And researchers found that this happening across the board, regardless of whether an instructor spent most of the day on content or on logistics. Quick word on making day one and the rest of the semester genuinely inclusive. Arrange seating so people can actually see each other's faces, not just the back of someone's head. Use a short student information sheet to learn about the students early on. I do this as a first quiz. I ask them about the most exciting thing they did this summer, where they're from, what everybody in the class needs to know about them. On that sheet, I ask for and then actually use preferred names and correct pronunciation, because nothing tells a student they're an afterthought faster than a professor who gives up on their name by the third syllable. I have an instant out here. I can explain to my students that, hey, we all have difficult names. You probably mispronounced mine. So let's learn together how to pronounce each other's names and try to remember it and have grace when we mess up. Let's talk about icebreakers. Carefully, because that word alone makes half this room wince. Oh, I hate that. I never call them that because bad icebreakers are the worst. Nobody wants to share two truths and a lie at 9 a.m. The fix is making them purposeful and brief. 5 minutes, not 20. Question Swap uses color-coded cards, light, reflective, and deep, so students choose how far they want to go, rather than getting ambushed by a heavy question first thing Monday morning. Say hi to a neighbor is a tiny, repeatable nudge that builds real peer friendships over time, not just on day one. And Take the Temperature uses live polling, I like to use Kahoot, to turn this room's mood into an actual word cloud, which is a great way to discover that everyone in the room is apparently sleepy. None of these need special training or expensive tools. Kahoot is free. That's kind of the whole point. So if you remember nothing else from the last few minutes, remember these 5. These are 5 quick wins. Pick an icebreaker that connects to your course content. Therefore, you're creating curiosity. You're demonstrating that the course content is important to you and will be important to students. Save the syllabus walkthrough for the last 10 minutes. One other idea is to co-create one shared expectation together instead of decreeing all of them. This is important for students to gather together and understand why some of your expectations or policies in the classroom might be different from another professor. Send a short welcome message the day before class and the day after class starts. There was a student that I messed up her name twice in the first class that we had. And so I sent an email out and apologized for that and said it would never happen again until we met in the next class. Think of one thing from today that you're going to try in week 1. Hopefully, it will make your first week of classes much more profitable, much more welcoming, and much more fun for students. We have an 18 source bibliography in the CAT wiki, and we also have these slides and other resources for you there. So enjoy your first week.